Loaves of Bread, a Jewish tale. It was wintertime, getting cold. The old woman was shivering in her house. She repaired sails for the sailors. But this winter there wasn't much work at all. It had been so cold. Oh, no flour left. She was about to make some bread. There's no flour left. I was sure I had enough for a couple of loaves. Well, maybe my neighbor down the hill. He's got a big house. He's got enough. I'm sure he could spare some flour for a little old woman like me. So she walked down the hill. She put her shawl around her shoulders. She knocked on his door. He opened the door. Sir, you know I'm the one who fixes the sail. Oh, yes, I know who you are. What do you need? Oh, it's a hard winter. I discovered I don't have any flour. I just need to make some bread. Could you spare a little flour? I would be glad to, but I'm afraid we don't have any flour left. We've been baking all day. Well, all morning anyway. Oh, wait a minute. Before you go, this isn't much, but you could go into our pantry and sweep. They're always spilling some flour, and you might get enough to get yourself some bread. Oh, thank you. Thank you. So she went inside and she swept up, and sure enough, there was quite a bit of flour on the floor. And by the time she had swept up, she had enough for 3 loaves of bread. And she went home quite happy. And she baked the bread, and the smell filled her little house. Oh, I'm going to have a nice supper of some fresh baked bread. Yes, yes. She took the bread out of the oven. She put it on her table. She looked at, which one shall I have tonight and then tomorrow? Oh, which one? There was a knock on the door. She went and opened the door, and there she saw a man with torn clothes. It looked like he had been hurt. What's wrong? Oh, I was robbed down there on the road. And I'm going to be able to make it home after, but I am hungry. I wonder if you might just have a little something to eat. Not much, just a little something. Then I'll be on my way. Wait right there. She went and grabbed the first loaf and came and gave it to him. Be well. And he said, thank you. It's nice to see some kindness. And she said, yes, I had kindness too. Someone gave me the flour to make the bread, and now I get to give you some bread. And she closed the door, and he was gone. And she went back to the table, and she looked, and she said, okay, well, now it's between you two. Which one shall I eat tonight? Let's see. Someone's at my door. She opened. Could he have come back? She opened the door, and no, it was someone else. A woman this time. She smelled of smoke. Some soot on her. Are you okay? Yeah, yes, I'm okay. There was a fire in my house, but we all got out. And some neighbors are letting us stay with them. Kind neighbors, but I don't want to ask them for food. They're already giving us beds to sleep in. Don't worry. I have some bread for you. And she went back inside and got the second loaf of bread and brought it and handed it to the woman whose house had burned down. Oh, thank you. Thank you. No. Take care. And the door closed again, and she went back and said, well, I don't have to choose. This is what I will have. and she picked it up, and just then she heard the wind. The wind was blowing, rattling the windows. And she's looking down at the bread. She's looking at her rattling windows, and the door starts rattling too. And the door blows open. The wind comes sweeping in and picks up the loaf of bread right out of her hands and carries it out the door. She follows it. She runs out the door, and she watches as her loaf of bread goes out over the sea. And she shouts, "You don't need my bread! You don't need my bread!" And she closed the door, and she had no supper. And she went to bed. What did I do? What did I do? And she woke up in the morning. I didn't do anything wrong. It's the wind. It's the wind. They say the king, Solomon, is a wise king. I'll go see him. He'll take care of this. And so she went to the king, and you may think that someone like her would not be seen by the king. But that wasn't King Solomon. King Solomon would see anyone and everyone. He saw her. And he said, What's wrong? King, I want you to arrest the wind. What? Arrest the wind. It's no fair. The wind should be punished. What for? What happened? Well, King, I repair sails for the sailors, and it's been a hard winter, not much work. And I didn't have any flour, but a kind neighbor gave me some flour. I baked 3 loaves of bread. I had 3 loaves of bread. And the king said, well, that's good. And she said, yes, but then there was a knock on the door. A knock on the door? What happened? Well, there was a man there. He had been robbed, and he was hungry, so what happened? Well, I gave him a loaf of bread, of course. Well, that was kind. What happened next? Well, then there was another knock on the door. Another knock on the door? Yes. It was a woman. Her home had burned, and her family had escaped, but they were hungry. So I gave her my second loaf of bread. Well, that was kind. What? But you had 3 loaves of bread, right? So then you had that? No. That's why I want you to arrest the wind. I was going to have the 3rd loaf, and the wind blew the door open and carried it out to sea. The wind does not need my bread, does not need my bread. King, I hear that you are a wise king and a fair king. Arrest the wind. And the king thought about it, and he said, well, I want justice to be done. The wind is working right now, helping some boats travel across the water. Let me think. And just then, 2 merchants came pulling a big trunk into the room, the throne room. And King Solomon looked at them. He didn't know them. What are you merchants doing? What are you doing? Oh, sire, our prayer was answered, and so we have brought gold. What are you talking about? Your prayer was answered? You have brought gold? Yes, King. You see, we were out at sea in our boat, and our boat was going to sink. And we prayed, and we said, if our boat does not sink, we will give 10% of our gold to the king to give to someone who deserves it. What happened with your boat? There's a big storm, a great big storm, and a hole opened up in the boat. Not a big hole, but enough that water was going in. And the boat looked like it was going to sink. It was going to sink. The water went right through that hole and started filling up the boat. It was going to sink. We were starting to go down, and we made our prayer. We made our prayer. And the storm stopped. And we were safe. And that's why we came here. But didn't you say there was a hole in the boat? I mean, if you have a hole in the boat, even if there's no storm, the boat can still sink. No, that's what's so strange. The wind carried a loaf of bread and it stuck in the hole. And it stopped up the hole. That's what saved us. Here, I broke off the end of the bread and handed it to the king. And the king held it up. And he said to the old woman, "Is this your loaf?" And she said, "Yes, that's my loaf. That's my loaf." And the king said, "Well, that is your loaf. Then that is your gold. That is your gold. Your kindness has been repaid. And now you and your friends will never be hungry again." And that's the story of the 3 loaves.